EDO. Welcome back to the Devil's Ledger for the week of March 22nd, the first day of spring. For once, gosh, something light to begin with, huh? Spring has officially arrived. The earth tilts just enough toward the sun, the days stretch a little longer. For a brief moment, it kind of feels like things might be okay, right? Well, if you've been with us for any length of time, you already know how this works. Because spring doesn't just bring renewal. It brings ritual. It brings obsession. And occasionally, it brings something much darker. So let's start where we always do, with the creepiest thing I heard this week. This is the story of the Catskill Mountain Coven. So, in the spring of 1952, when the last snows had melted from the Catskill Mountains, something ancient stirred in the deep hollows of Sullivan County. Local farmers began finding their livestock arranged in geometric configurations that suggested ritualistic purpose. Not killed by predators, but carefully positioned in patterns that defied explanation. Sheriff William Holcomb initially dismissed these reports as teenage pranks, until he discovered the first, quote, Mayday circle, perfectly arranged rings of animal bones, each positioned exactly 100 feet from the next, creating a pattern visible from only mountain ridges above. The precision suggested something far more organized than teenage mischief. The investigation revealed a group calling themselves the Mountain Keepers, led by former seminary student Marcus Whitmore, who claimed to have, quote, rediscovered the true Christian mysteries through Celtic traditions. His followers, mostly educated professionals from New York City seeking spiritual alternatives, gathered at a remote Catskill compound every full moon and every seasonal celebration. Their May Day observances drew authorities' attention. Witnesses reported robed figures moving through forests carrying torches, with their chants echoing across valleys in languages predating the English settlements. After these ceremonies, investigators found clearings stripped of vegetation in perfect circles, trees bearing symbols carved so deeply that the wounds never healed, and springs that ran red for days, despite having no apparent contamination source. The break came when hunting guide Robert Chen discovered an underground chamber carved into the mountainside, accessed through a natural cave system and modified with engineering precision. Inside the cave, Chen found evidence of occupancy spanning decades, more carved symbols, ritual implements, and human remains that preliminary examination suggested were far older than the Mountain Keepers' known activities. Dr. Eleanor Mitchell, the forensic anthropologist who examined the remains, reported findings that challenged conventional understanding of the area's history. The bones showed ritualistic modification, deliberate scarification, careful arrangement, and preservation techniques with no precedent in known Native American practices. Carbon dating suggested the remains were over 200 years old, predating European settlement and raising questions about what traditions Whitmore's group had actually, quote, rediscovered. The Mountain Keepers disbanded in 1955 following incidents that authorities sealed under a court order, remaining in effect today. Whitmore disappeared during the final investigation, leaving behind only a journal filled with astronomical calculations and references to the awakening that comes with spring's true arrival. Today, the Catskill site remains under federal protection, officially designated as an archaeological preserve, but functionally serving as a quarantine zone. The spring rituals may have ended, but locals report that the mountain still observes its own seasonal celebrations. Trees budding a few weeks early, wildlife behaving with apparent intelligence, and sounds echoing the chants Chen heard 70 years ago. Some traditions, it seems, run deeper than the people who practice them. On The Devil Within this week, staying with the pagan springtime theme, when ancient cultures marked fertility, rebirth, and the awakening of the earth, we're launching a new series, The California Hippie Murders. Northern California, communal living, nature worship, and Earth Mother philosophy centered on fertility and balance. But behind all that language of flowers and harmony, something had shifted. What they called ceremonies, what they claimed were rituals of renewal, became something else entirely. Because these weren't symbolic acts. They were murders. They were ritualized, justified, and hidden inside a culture that didn't want to look too closely. On the Ides of April this week, we conclude our series on the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, the assassin, the investigation, the ideology that made it possible, and the documents. The files that remain classified, the intelligence that has never been fully disclosed, and the questions that 3 decades later refuse to settle. Because some events don't end, they echo. On Criminal Mischief, Carolyn Osorio launches a new miniseries, and it's one of those stories that feels almost fictional. A Seattle bank robber known as Hollywood. Not violent, not subtle, but unforgettable. Disguises, confidence, a kind of strange charisma that turned robbery into performance. It's a wild ride, one that builds towards an ending that you genuinely won't see coming. Taboo Treasures is dark this week. We'll leave it there. The guys will be back soon. On Finding Me with Josh Wolf. Josh has made the move. Finding Me is now on his original YouTube home, the Hey Man channel, which means a much wider audience is now seeing what this show really is. A real-time gut check, accountability, consistency, showing up every day. And he's already seeing the results. This one's a can't miss. This Week in Horror. It's a quick hit this week. Ready or Not 2. Here I Come. If the original Ready or Not was a darkly comedic bloodbath wrapped in a twisted game of hide and seek, this sequel leans even harder into the chaos. Bigger set pieces, higher stakes, and a mythology that's starting to feel less like satire and more like something ancient and inevitable. Still sharp, still fun, but there's a shift here. The joke isn't quite the joke anymore, and that makes it a lot more dangerous. If you're listening right now on Apple or Spotify, follow the show. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and hit that bell. This network is growing because of you, and we're just getting started. Follow our socials on Instagram at The Devil Within Pod, The Ides of April Pod, and at taboo_treasures. On YouTube, just go to the EVO Creative Network page and you'll find all the shows. And if something in this episode stayed with you, share it. Send it to someone who appreciates the stories behind the stories. Because every week, we pull back the curtain just a little further. So we'll see you this week across the EVO universe. The Devil's Ledger is an EVO production recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. For The Devil's Ledger, I'm your writer and host, Brandon Morgan.